can jump on in a second. I just sent him the link.
We're live though. I already hit it.
Oh, you already hit the button? Okay, all right. Surprise.
He can come on though. I'll keep an eye on the thing though. So
okay.
Hey, so far there's no one watching yet, so that's cool. Welcome to another Thursday edition, because they're always Thursday editions of the Mattriarchy. I am, of course, Matt Rhys, the host, and I have with me. I honestly cannot remember your name, although I've seen it before. I only know you as Twitless.
I'm fine with Twitless because yeah, I thought it was really cool, like a really clever name, and then like I've had people call it Twiddles, and then it's like okay, Twiddles, Skittles.
For those of you who will watch on the replay, because we do have some people that come back and watch them, Twitless is the writer for the webcomic Super Schooled, which I have been following sort of for a little while, and it's I say sort of, it's hilarious, but I'm not up to date. Here's my excuse.
Oh, okay. You better be good.
Oh, it's
or I'm leaving.
So here's the thing is one of the things I like to do is I like to find new webcomics and just binge them.
Mm-hmm.
And just to read them all as much as I can and kind of get a feel for them. And I found yours a couple years ago, and I really enjoyed it. But what I ran into the problem with is that your archives, 100, and so I got past their ways, and then I had to restart my computer to do some updates, and I don't remember where it was.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Find it now.
So yeah. The archive is on my list of things that we should do at some point if I ever like get off my lazy butt and like tell Taylor to do it, or tell like we have a web developer kind of guy who I might try to get to help us out with the archive. I think that's one of the major things we need to do on the site because we've got a good 300 plus strips.
Yeah.
Like, it's like I blink and like we actually have content.
Yeah, it's quite a bit, and it's very good stuff. Taylor, thank you for joining us.
Hey there.
Or would you prefer me to use the label on the screen?
Whatever you like.
I am not cartoonicist.
I was gonna say I'm going by Twiddles right now. Actually, the misspelling of Twitless. It's much smarter than me saying twit. I thought my name was so clever because it's like, oh, I put the wit in twit, which is a joke I stole from Ratchet and Clank actually. And then I was like, well, I'm Twitless, so I'm actually like, I'm not stupid, and that's what my name means. But by the time you explain it, it flips back to being stupid again. So you can just call me John.
Oh man, I feel I'm going to spend a lot of tonight's stream laughing. We have the Metal joining us in the chat right now. He is also a webcomicer.
Oh, cool. Oh, so well, actually, I take that back. I say, like it's like joining. See, being in webcomics is like joining a like AA support group, except it's an addiction that you never get rid of.
And it's like once you've been bitten, you sort of feel like if you're not making comics, there's something wrong with you.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like I said, it's an addiction you cannot stop, and it's just you're just doomed.
Well, and I have it's not up right now because
try to move this.
No, go for it, man. Go for it. Do what
That's
you
okay. I love the view of the vent in your ceiling.
Yeah,
give us the fan. The fan, yes. Give us the view of the fan.
That is quality entertainment.
There we go. See, my fan isn't moving, and you don't have a fan, so like not it's like a triptych of banality.
I like to show off the ethnicity with a little batik.
Oh yeah. You actually have culture. You have
yes, I do. I do. I like to force it on people so that they feel really awkward, and they're like, "Oh, I guess I'll honor yourself." Here you go.
I lived out west. I don't give a crap.
I think I'm going to be stuck with this. This is what happens when you go to Best Buy and you give you a whole 3 feet of cord to work with.
Well, I'm just using the integrated one on mine. But anyway, so getting back to the we migrated our websites this summer, and we haven't rebuilt all of our archives and everything yet.
Oh yeah. Did you hear that, Taylor? Our archive, we have to fix it because people can't get on our site and easily get back into the strips they were reading.
That?
Yeah.
You
do
past
that.
100.
Anything past the 100, it's all your fault.
Yeah.
You're the reason why we're bleeding readers.
Well,
it's not my writing quality.
Time Devin was supposed to redo our website, and it never happened.
Yeah, it's his fault then. Okay, as long as it's not my fault and my terrible writing quality, then
yeah.
Then
What I was getting at was that when we migrated this summer, there had been an article on there where it was called "Chris Lawton Ruined My Life," and my co-creator with our webcomic, Force of Good and Evil is our book, is our title.
Yep.
And our co-creator Chris Lawton is the one who suggested to me the idea of taking all of these comic pitches we were developing and forming them into a universe.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the universe creation bug. And
you poor soul.
Oh my goodness, yes. So
what a disaster that is.
Yeah, oh my goodness, it changed my entire life. And now all I can do is talk about people that never existed as though they were my friends and family.
Okay, sorry. So I just have to put out a disclaimer. I am a terrible person. So I will say things that are terrible. Don't take it personally. I only mean like half of it. It's up to you to decide which half.
Anything over a third, and I'm okay with it. You know.
Okay. All right. Just don't call the cops when I say never mind. Don't swat us.
No, it's fine. It's fine. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that these stories that become very real to us. Like I said, I've been reading y'all's comic for a little while, sporadically, because I can't find where I left off. But I've been trying to keep up on some of the new stuff, but if I'm busy and I can't, I lost track in the middle of the baseball story.
Yeah.
So did we. That's a surprise.
No. I mean, like I went on with life, and when I came back, I couldn't find my way back again. So
well, it makes sense considering that's when we brought in the time traveler. So
yeah, exactly. That was the perfect time to get lost because, like I said, I had no idea what I was doing. And it's funny that you mentioned that actually, because I thought it'd be funny to do some like baseball type strips, but neither of us really have played baseball. Like my only sports experience is soccer, and that's how you'll notice that like Taylor like drew like a football field. And then instead of fixing it, we just slapped a baseball field on top of it and then tried to make that analogous to softball. So like the layers of insanity that we poured on it. And eventually I was just like, you know what? It's probably funnier this way that we have no idea what we're doing. Yeah. And then we proceeded to then make one of our longest storylines about it, which shows you what professionals we are.
That's actually kind of funny. For my own sake, one of our longest stories, it's 90 some pages, is also sort of sports themed. We're going to be relaunching it on the website coming up here in a few weeks, but it's called National Villainy, and it's because we have a similar premise with Forces where we've got hero school and villain school and that kind of stuff, but our villains take a cross country road trip to go to the National Villainy competition, where they compete against other villain schools. And so we have this massive cast of characters with 4 different schools and all kinds of stuff. And in the middle of all of this weird conspiracy with a plant. It's a whole thing. But we had it has a lot of competition sports kind of jokes, and it was about 90, 93, 95 pages, something like that.
Yeah, I'm not nearly as creative. I think I ran out after the first 5, and then I was like, let's just have meteors hit things. That'll work. Rocks fall from the sky. That's good.
Rocks fall, everyone dies.
Okay, so the metal says world building is the most addicting drug of them all, and it's like, well, have you tried cocaine? Because I hear it's a hell of a drug. At least according to Rick James.
I've been told this, yeah.
At least spoken through by the bard Chappelle. Okay.
When you guys, so you guys have been, how many years you guys been at the Super School? And I'm going to go ahead and put this here on the screen also so people can check it out.
Yeah, you better, or I'm leaving.
There you go. Here, hang on a second.
I'm going to say it 9 times, so
that's fine. One day you'll actually mean it. But anyway, go ahead. How did you guys get onto this trip?
Okay, so do you want the story of Super School, or do you want the story that's even more boring of Taylor and I getting together and collaborating on Sonic fan comics?
Honestly, let's talk Sonic fan comics later.
Okay, all right. So Super Schooled was basically me getting bitten by that, like I said, the webcomic disease, which if anyone's considering doing a webcomic, don't. unless you want a lifetime of pain and suffering, which is basically every comics fan ever. So, you know who you are. But
I mean, that's
basically,
basically working in comics, period.
right, exactly. It'll break your heart and your wallet and your marriage and everything. So basically, because I'm smart, I went to like the best place on earth for anyone, which is a comic book convention. And then I saw a bunch of people who were also depressing their lives by making comics. And so I was like, man, I got to get me some of this. I need some of this fulfillment.
My life has too much meaning. I have to change this now.
I have to drain it out. I need to be bled dry. Excuse me, I'm really hot, so I'm going to start stripping.
Oh, good God. We're not that kind of show, man.
That's my joke. I said that during your first test stream. You don't get to pull that on me. Anyway, so I called Taylor, and I was finally like, we have to do it now. Like, there is no excuse. We've been talking to each other for years about our ideas, and just like, oh, one day we're gonna do this, and one day I'm gonna make a world-changing, genre-blending, post-apocalyptic Matrix mix arc, thing. And then Taylor's like, one day I'm gonna make this thing that's totally not furry stuff. And it's me throwing him under the bus. So like we had our dream projects, and then it was like, I was just like, man, we're not making any progress on those. So let's do another thing instead. And we had this idea one day to make a superhero cartoon, because, comics isn't hard enough. Let's animate every single frame. And so we actually recorded some voice lines for that and everything. And it never went anywhere beyond the concept art and a couple like test strips, basically. And I hit writer's block at like strip 7. And then like just quit for a long time. So after that comic book convention, I finally said, okay, let's just do it. Let's just screw it, put down a little bit of money, buy a website, put ourselves into the hole some. And then the, what's it called? What's that financial concept where it's like you spend money and you feel like you have to keep spending money?
Well, I don't know, but I think they call it.
It's something about returns and, oh gosh, it's escaping me.
Point of diminishing returns?
It's not diminishing returns. It's basically, okay, so it's the idea that okay, so let's say that you buy a ticket to a movie, okay? And then you lose the ticket. So you're already out the $10. But because you already feel like you have lost something, you're more likely to actually spend another $10 to replace your ticket and actually go see the show. So you actually, if you think about it, you've actually lost $20. And so there's like there's a concept for that.
You went to see The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm. Oh, relevant. Actually, it shouldn't be The Rise of Skywalker or whatever.
I can't care enough to make modern Star Wars jokes.
Neither can I. I think Star Wars should die. Like hot take number one from Twitless.
Aren't we being
like, there goes the
feeling the malaise of its rotting carcass? I thought that's what was going on.
No, I think it should have died way long ago, because anyway, we're that's like for way later. Anyway, so
that was 2 weeks show ago.
Yeah. So basically,
any hope
I had Dan Sacrow on. We were talking Star Wars. Anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, we finally just decided to, yes, our webcomic is so much better than Star Wars. At least we don't we just ruin our own lore. We don't ruin someone else's. So
that's actually true.
So basically, we just did it. And then we just did it and kept failing at it until we are at our current stage of failure.
So with I love that. So with the were there any particular inspirations that you guys had with coming together with your concept?
Yes, I know. I'll let Taylor actually say a word before I interrupt him.
What? I was just gonna say Logan came up with the concept back when it was the idea for an animated show.
All right, so basically, the inspiration, there's two sides to it, okay? And so the quick answer is Sky High. Unfortunately, the movie Sky High, and I watched that, and I felt really depressed after I saw it because I'm an idiot, and those dummies who got really depressed because Avatar wasn't real.
No, that.
You haven't seen that? Yeah, like there's let me see if I can find that clip. Okay, it's called
I'm
Avatar
unaware that this is a thing. And also, I've
never heard of this.
I've said this before. It's a little old hat snark for me, but it's like I felt my heart grow 3 sizes to make room for all the pity that I now feel over somebody saying that.
All right. So where do I put this? I guess I'll put this post in the chat.
Last Airbender Avatar?
No.
The one.
The masterpiece that is James Cameron's reskinning
Oh my God.
of Dances with
horrible.
Wolves. Yeah, no. There's totally like so many people were so in love with like that concept that they were depressed that it wasn't real. Like it was an actually described phenomena, and so like
hadn't they already seen the Dances with Wolves or Pocahontas to fill that gap in their soul?
Right. So the idea is the fact that like you get so wrapped up in the idea of this imaginary world that when you basically get jerked back to reality and you realize that the imaginary world isn't real, you actually feel kind of depressed because it's like, oh, I'd like that to be real. You want it to be real. You want the fantasy to be real. So
I am Jalen, and I am
so these pathetic, horrible, just terrible, depressing individuals just like got so depressed after Avatar, and an intellectual got super depressed because Sky High wasn't real when I was a kid. So anyway,
in all fairness, it does have Kurt Russell on it.
Yeah.
No, I was just like, oh, it's like a superhero.
I don't think that Kurt Russell should be real. I think
I'm very depressed that Kurt Russell's career isn't real anymore. So anyway,
can we just rename this live stream? We don't like popular stuff.
Did I not start the stream by saying I'm going to basically be like spitting hot takes like every 10 seconds?
Well,
I'm just getting warmed up. You just wait till I start
that's fine.
spitting fire. Anyway,
you said it specifically. I say terrible things.
Yes, I am, because I'm a terrible person. Taylor knows this.
Well, and you see that's perfectly okay by me because wow, you did the link there. Avatar induced depression from HuffPo. So it's at least 40% chance of not being made up.
Wow. I just picked the first. Like, I think there's a few more that are, slightly more legitimate. Like, I don't know, even CNN maybe. All right. So, basically, I
want to feel very, very old. Okay, how old were you when you saw Sky High?
When I saw Sky High. I might as well rename what? Rename it Hot Takes or Sky High?
No,
Easy Bake
we
Coven.
hate popular things.
We hate popular things? Oh, that's a good name. Okay, yeah,
so
I get it. Okay.
The chat is about 30 seconds off because of how StreamYard works.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I'm totally going to forget that.
It's okay. I'll remind you and make you look stupid. Anyway.
Okay. Okay, so I was an age, and I don't do numbers, and I hate reminding myself how old I feel, which should make you feel like super old, Grandpa.
So here's why I ask, right? So with Forces of Good and Evil, our premise, we have two friends. One gets sent to Hero High School, one gets sent to Villain High School. They get sent because they score a certain way on an aptitude test that they take their junior year. So Greg is he's a good guy. He's a goody two shoes. He's a nerd. He always tries to do the right thing. Gets sent to villain school. Chad, who starts out his journey, is kind of gruff, kind of a bully, kind of cocksure, kind of does his own thing. Gets sent to hero school. So kind of a fish out of water thing with that whole deal. And then they both have to try to adapt to their environments. Meanwhile, their schools they go to, they didn't realize that are in their hometown in this rural Wisconsin town, right? So they grew up, they know the terrain and everything, so they're not separated from that, but they don't have any contacts with where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
We started working on this, Chris and I, in 2003. We tried sending it to Mad Magazine. They were interested. We didn't know what to do with it, so we shelved it for a while. And in 2005, we pulled it out and decided to make a webcomic, put it up, and we just first of the year, the 3rd of January, and that was 14 years ago now, right? So so Sky High, I think in chat it was I think they're saying Sky High came out around 2004, so I would have had my very understandable Sky High depression when I was 18 years old. So very, very, very impressionable young man. I was about 25 when I first saw that movie, and everybody I was telling about my pitch for Forces, they're like, "Oh, Sky High," and I'm like, "We developed this free. No, it's not like Sky High."
All right, well, so to be honest, so Sky High was some of the inspiration, but there's a second side to Super Schooled, and it's something that it's probably the thing I'm most proud of with it, in terms of the creation of the storyline in the world, whatever, which is the fact that in a lot of superhero and even super villain media, I feel like a lot of it tends to be very binary. In the sense that you either have one side that's portrayed as the good guy, or one side that's portrayed as the smart, and then one side that's portrayed as the stupid. Okay, and so like you'll even have like a thing that's like, oh, this is going to be a story that's all about the villains, and we're going to make all the heroes look like idiots. So like if you take like a look at like Megamind,
Yep.
you know, it was very focused on the villain, and then like the so-called hero ended up being either like a jerk or or just an idiot murderer or both. And so like I found like a lot of superhero media ends up being just, like I said, very much on one side or the other. And so the thing I wanted to do with Super Schooled is I really wanted to be on both sides. I wanted to show that both of them could be stupid, both of them could be interesting, both of them, like either one of them could be antagonist or protagonist, depending on how I felt which thing would be funny. And so in the comic, we try to pass I think the trope is called passing the idiot ball. So I try to pass the idiot ball around, and pretty much everyone has it at some point. And there's not like necessarily this one character. That's another thing that sometimes I get disappointed in certain types of jokey media. Like, so Archer, like I'm a big fan of Archer, but I feel like Archer does a pretty good job of this, especially lately, I think, but, or later.
Is that still on?
It is actually. But in, there were certain moments where it was like Lana was always the straight woman. She was always right about everything. And it's kind of like, like I'd like to see her be stupid once in a while too. And so they actually do a decent job of that. But in a lot of media, it's like one character gets to be, roll eyes, I'm the smart one. And so my goal for Super Schooled was basically to make everyone, I wanted to be, equal with it. Everyone gets to be stupid.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And you guys have, it's certainly an over-the-top comedy series that Super Schooled is. You've got, every character has this exaggerated sense of wherever they're at, and I think it's and of course your guys have that super unique art style that I like too. So
yeah, that's where Taylor can actually say a word. Speak, Lurch. I say that because he's tall. Sorry, I interrupted you. What word did you say?
Montana.
Montana. Okay.
Albuquerque.
Hello, Awful Redneck Gaming. Oh man, we've got a classy chat tonight.
We do. He shows up every once and again to pretend that he cares about the things I have to say. So.
No, he's here for me. Nice. I hate to say it. He's here for the twiddles.
I'm sure. So, you guys have been doing Super Schooled how many years?
Oh, you're asking another number again?
I think about 3.5 now. Probably getting closer to 4.
I think we're coming up on something like 4 years.
No.
Something like that.
Well, actually, here, I can find out exactly. We just need to see when the first...
Go into our archive that only goes up to 100.
Well, you only have to go back to 1, so that should be
good. Let's see when we first...
I was going to say, all you have to do is click that one button that goes to first,
May 17th, it is May 17th, 2016. So it is January 2019. So
just almost 4 years.
Yeah. Very cool. And so when you guys set it out, did you guys have because I know you guys have, one of the fun things that you guys do is every story ends with the same strip. Right. And so you have that bringing it back around kind of thing, which I think is so much fun. That
was actually Taylor's idea. He has good ideas sometimes.
We did not plan that at all. That was how the first one ended. And then I'm trying to remember, because what is the second one? I'm trying to remember what the joke actually was there. But I think I just saw the opportunity to have a very similar ending and said, "Hey, I got an idea."
The second storyline is the paper about someone important to you.
I'm trying to remember how it ended. But
it
just kind of came naturally based on what we were doing.
I think it ends with them basically talking about how they didn't really learn anything.
Yeah,
that's usually how I try to put it in. Yeah. I hate the whole like, we actually learned a lesson, a moral of the story. I like to go, nah, we learned nothing.
Well, and
comic about school in
when it
which no
comes
one
to
learns
their,
anything.
I'm
Go
gonna
figure.
forget your character's name. It's All Star, is the hero fellow,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Brad.
and I can't remember your villain. It's
Logan.
Draco, yeah.
yeah, and Draco is such that he's not going to learn anything. I mean, or he wouldn't acknowledge he learned anything anyway, and that's one of the fun things is his own personal hubris.
Yes.
I love that as a trope, seeing people fall down on their own hubris. It's hilarious.
Oh, see, that's why I came up with Hubris Bot. That's probably the character I'm the most proud of, is to actually have, because Draco's incapable of like acknowledging his own hubris, so he built a machine to tell him and named it Hubris Bot.
Right,
And
right.
it doesn't listen.
So as you guys have it done, do you guys have like an end game for Super School, like a limited thing, or are you just going to run it till the wheels fall off?
I do. I don't know if it's actually getting through to Logan every time I try to beat him over the head with it.
Because
I'm not going to ask for spoilers, but that's one of that when you're dealing with the high school format. I mean, are you just doing 4 years? What's your plan?
Oh no, it's yeah. Like, I mean, because like if you actually count it, it's like they've been at school a week or something. No, I mean, there's not the timeline is kind of it's not like 1-to-1. So Taylor usually is the one who thinks more about the ends of or conclusions for those types of things. I'm just like, I'm gonna run it until it stops being either fun to do or stops being funny, and then it's like. And my philosophy, like I said, and Taylor is different, so I will allow him to speak in a moment. But my approach is always I try to be at least a little. I don't know. I try to be surprising, which in itself is a trope, but I don't want to necessarily kind of go, okay, this is the Friends ending or necessarily the Seinfeld ending. Oh gosh, now I'm dating myself a ton. In terms of comedy, I gravitate a little bit more towards like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where it's just like, well, that came out of nowhere. So if we were to end it, there's at least a part of me that would want to like slap somebody upside the head with just like, well, okay. But Taylor has a much more, normal way of thinking about how things end.
Normal? I don't think I'd say. I'm always looking for that way to somehow connect like literally everything we've ever done.
Okay.
Oh, F? Okay, sorry. Sometimes when people type F in the chat, that means the stream went dead or something.
I was going to say, did the stream die?
I think they have rest in peace Papa Franku, who I do deal with. And
it might be nothing.
I think it's an F for respect.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was thinking, but
Gotcha,
I'm not sure what it means.
I do not know who that is, so maybe they'll say, hey.
Somebody above says, "Sorry, I miss Sir Francis V or Phil."
Thanks for coming on, Ninja. Appreciate that.
Hello, my homie.
Yeah.
Look at me being so gangster. You sure picked the right stream.
I was going to say, back to the other thing I was going to say is that I really the idea about connecting everything you've ever done. I actually really relate to that, because with Forces our comic, it's part of our greater universe, and so superhero universe that we've done with Ideal. We've done some print stuff, some web stuff, some whatever.
Gotcha.
It's a single timeline. It goes back to the dawn of time. It has a whole alternate history that worked in there, and so even though Forces is played, except for the action, is played almost entirely for laughs or high school angsty cringe. Is there some of that? Because I think that's funny. With that, it still ties in. So the alien invasion in the 50s gets mentioned, and the alternate history of Fremont City, of which doesn't really exist, but the alternate history of our fictional towns exists, and the all that kind of stuff that gets put in every once and again.
Yeah, our comic is fictional too.
Is part of it. So what?
I said our comic is fictional as well.
Well, yes,
We-
but
we
I meant
share
that in
the
common.
whole history.
We
The whole
share- we
history.
I think what he's
we share this-
trying
this
to
trait in
say,
common.
Logan, is that he's the Tolkien of the webcomic world.
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I'm
that's-
sorry. I'm sorry. Did you, Mister? I started my lore at the dawn of time.
Yeah. No,
when
really,
when
we have a,
Iluvatar began the great cosmic symphony.
no. I mean, no. It's that actually does. It's not Luvatar, but we actually have a like cosmology in our universe is different than it is in the real world or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. And it actually is
Right.
one of the things like to explain myself on that part a little bit. So we've been doing this since 2006, and we've changed websites a few times. We had one point where our web host went from going by the month to charging by the year, and Chris and I didn't have by the year money at the time, and
Ooh.
locked us out of our website.
I'm glad you brought that up because like I want to do. I would love to do either some streams, and I'm too lazy to set up my own streams, so maybe I'll just like co-opt yours. But but I wanted to either do some streams, or I might actually get around to making a few more videos because I actually got like more than one subscriber the other day. And I wanted to kind of address some of the I guess under the hood stuff because some of the things that you don't necessarily expect to have to spend a lot of time getting headaches over is stuff like web hosting. And like Taylor and I jumped on a certain web host and it got sold to another service or what bought out by someone else. And all of a sudden it's like a whole new like ball game. And we were fortunate enough that our hosting so far has been relatively unchanged. And there's only been a couple hiccups here and there. I think we have to pay for our domain name more often. Whereas the previous host that we got a really good deal and they weren't charging us for it. But yeah, like you said before, when if they change the subscription model or whatever, like for ours does the year charge you all at once for a year, and it's like if you have to drop down at least $200 sometimes to keep the thing running, and if you're like a poor person trying to get into comics, which is like every person who wants to get into comics except for J.J. Abrams when he wants to just give his son a Spider-Man issue. Unless you're someone like that, like you're basically like, like $200 hurts. So it's,
Oh yeah. And so what we ended up having to do is we were able to get hosting set up from another place, but we our archives we had to actually rebuild because some of our pages hadn't gotten backed up. Hard drive crashed at the same time.
Oh gosh!
We actually had to rescan art and re-letter, probably a third at the time because the rest we just didn't have access to it.
Was this during the Dark Ages, Iluvatar, when the Great Darkness was?
This was in 2008, I want to say.
And Iluvatar brought out the Xerox and said,
anyhow,
"I did not back up my universe."
Anyway, in the middle of all of that, we one of the things we did to kind of try to because we had people that were had been coming to the website and checking us out pretty regularly. So in order to have something for the fans and readers, we wrote a novella, and it was like a chapter a week. It was like 700 words or whatever a week, and it was about one of our Golden Age heroes who returns to space. He's an alien who has come to spread a message of peace on the cusp of World War II, and then he has to return back to space to his home world, and it's about his adventure through space. And so, our space lore gets investigated in that way too, and that whole thing, and that's part of our cosmology that's in there. So,
gotcha.
So yeah, it's things are different. Our superpower explanation for where they came from, how they show up, all that kind of stuff. So
right.
So
it does. So time has to change to make room for my story. Taylor.
No, I mean, okay, yeah. So like, I'm a troll. So like, if I find a soft spot, I'm gonna poke it. So like, you're a Luvatar from now until eternity.
Yeah, I don't actually have soft spots. I mean, I actually have soft spots, but
I'm just messing. But no, like, so my lore is like my approach to lore is what makes me chuckle at the time. So it's a very, very deep lore. And it usually is like, that's funny. That's going to be his origin story.
This is where we have 12,000 one-time characters in the comic.
No. We have 12,000 one-time characters because Taylor is so good at designing characters. It's like his expertise. And so, because he can design, like, in fact, like, we should do a stream one time and have him do it with chat. Because, like, if you basically spit a character at him, he can do it in about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And he'll have it on stream for you. He's that fast.
No, I mean, that's one of the things that's really interesting about your style and everything. Is just like a lot of your background have such complexity and depth, and they're just so much fun. And
he's a wizard, yeah, and I take full advantage of it.
I'm trying to remember the guy's name. You have like a Batman gag character, Bat Knight,
Nightman.
What?
It's
Nightman.
It's actually
Nightman,
from
yes.
the Old English.
Yes.
It's before the Great Vowel Shift. Connect man.
Nicked Man.
Mm-hmm. That's the correct pronunciation.
Anyway, yeah, that's some hilarious stuff. So.
Those are some of my favorite strips to write. And I think they're like the worst for Taylor to draw because it's
exactly.
like completely new assets every single time.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, I'll just like make up a character out of a pun and have Taylor have to do an entire character design thing in a panel.
So what is your process as a team? How do you guys go about doing that?
Well, first, I come up with about 1 million really cool ideas based on what we've been doing, and I try to pitch them to Logan, and he makes a very important contribution. He ignores me.
I have no response to that.
I thought you were going to say, I have no knowledge or memory of this. I don't.
He's right. I mean, like, it's a shoe fits. No, I usually just go, okay. And I go, but this would be funnier. But what if they just farted instead? No, I haven't done a fart joke yet. I just go like, no, what if it were that thing that Taylor said that was way smart, except I make it really stupid because it makes me laugh.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you are passing the idiot ball, you got to have some of that going on.
I'm an expert at idiot ball.
I mean, once you've done the make me a sandwich joke, there's nowhere to go but up. So,
Badooch.
I liked that one. That one made me smile because you made him into different sandwiches. One time he was like a hoagie. That's funny. That's humor. And you put the little olive on top.
Well, now that you say it like that.
The little things do make the difference with that. So,
okay, so all right, actually, I do have a very important question because like the jokes that you think land, you're like, oh man, this is the best joke ever, and then it's like it's terrible. So my question would be like, if you've read some of our comics, like what was the thing that made you like that was the funniest? Just so I can like know and then like probably be ashamed because it's probably Taylor's idea. No. Like if I say like which one of them was maybe like the funniest, like
I'm not sure I can remember a specifically funniest joke. One of the things that I love about the strip as a whole is just like how damn committed it is, regardless of how silly the gag is. And that's one of those things where because it's basically an absurdist concept. I mean, all superheroes are a little bit, right? But with the comedy going as far as it does, it's one of those things where if you have something that's really just goofy, but there's just a commitment to it where you're not second guessing the joke, then in a 3-panel format, that's great. Yeah, you really can't. When people don't commit to their jokes is when I think in something like that where you're gonna have a lot of misses. Well,
we definitely have plenty of misses, but and that was one of the things as a writer. I had to give myself permission to miss. Actually, was very freeing and liberating because, and that's another thing I think that's kind of under the hood for writing is, especially if you're a perfectionist, which a lot of writers are, is you have to give yourself permission to miss. You have to give yourself permission to fail and to screw up, and that's actually one of the barriers to getting started. Because I'm actually starting another comic project right now. I'm actually starting a serious branch. Ooh, I just saw the word ism. Okay. Absurdism is the best branch of existentialism. Existentialism.
That's an entirely appropriate statement if you've ever read the Metals comic. But
I have no comment about existentialism.
So, anyhow, no, I think that's true because when it comes to writing, you're going to miss, right? There's times where you're just not going to get exactly what you want out of it, and especially if you're doing something routinely. If you're doing like a serialized on a schedule, I've got to hit it by X and Y dates. You're just going to have some days with that, and it's in some ways it's more important. I think it's true for writers and for artists. It's more important to be done than it is to be perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So if you take anything from the stream, go forth, my children, and suck. And suck often.
This is why you guys will never see it on the other side, but there are a host of comics that we have created that Logan has scripted. And halfway through the creation of it, I find a place where we can basically split it into 2 or 3 more strips, thus making less work for me and getting more comic out of it to be able to push.
Yeah,
Actually, there's a couple of places you've had in the comments where you've mentioned you fessed up to it. I remember in the
yeah, that's true. Actually,
places like that, where you're like, well, this was going to be 1 joke, but now it's 4 jokes.
It's a bargain. What are you talking about?
It can also happen when I desperately see a chance to and want to create something really powerful and meaningful and emotional, and Logan will have none of it. And so we fight back and forth until we come to some kind of happy medium. And basically that usually ends with us having to stretch out the idea so that we can actually fit some type of
everybody wins. I don't see the problem.
Some type of what's the word? Punchline in there, where I would have otherwise loved to do a cliffhanger or make it dramatic or something. It's like nope, we must have a joke in there.
Yeah. No, and I think honestly, and this is one thing we do. Like I said, we don't really joke up too much with the superhero action stuff with our stuff, but and we definitely have those moments of teen angst and everything. But at the same time, I think that's one of the differences in format, right? We do typically full page size, right? So you could take it to print. We won't take Forces to print, but you could take it to print, except where we don't, because I do like infinite canvas for the right page.
In the end, it doesn't even matter.
Yes, in the end, it doesn't matter. But one of the jokes never have to land if they retain escape velocity.
That was my Linkin Park reference. Because you said angst.
I see.
That's an example of a joke not landing.
There you go.
That is an object lesson, children.
I see. I'm just not that familiar with Linkin Park, so I didn't get the reference. I'm a little old for Linkin Park. But anyway, the excuse me. But I think one of the things that with the strip format that you have there is it really lends itself toward consistent jokes, toward ending each strip with a punchline, brings it in the next one, and I think that's a particular strength of a strip. Whereas I think the page, because you've got to scroll down on a screen, I think that necessarily works that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's one thing that I think has really been that's been very helpful to me as a writer, and this is another under the hood thing, is writing. Everyone, I feel like at some point wants to write a kind of grand scope epic, but writing well is a discipline. And so doing small, strictly formatted pieces of writing will train and hone parts of your brain to do things well. And so the 4-panel strip that we do in Super Schooled is very regimented because it's 4 panels. Like there's certain limitations to that medium. And so especially if you're going to do a 4-panel strip that has that's comedically inclined, then you only have 4 panels to establish a setup that will hopefully make someone laugh. And there's, so there's certain limitations to that, but disciplining yourself to then work with that format, work with the routine of it, but then through that, find the experiments you can play, the ways to upend that format at times, is again very, very good for writing. And
that's
so
actually why, in terms of like action stories, I'm a big fan of the 8-page comic. Right? Yeah, like once again, being a man of a certain age now, when I was growing up, they still had backups in comics fairly regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Where young writers would get their start, is they'd write the 8-page filler in the back.
Yeah.
And you have to tell a compelling Robin story, a compelling Man-Bat story, a compelling Jimmy Olsen, Superman's pal story.
Right.
Some of those, of course, are Quarterman comics because I'm not that old.
I was going to say, when you said Jimmy Olsen, Superman's friend, I was like, goodness gracious.
Quarterman, man. Come on.
Yeah. The ones where he's a giant turtle?
I didn't see that one.
Oh, okay, right. There's 9 of them.
I'm aware.
The gorilla one that got
was one of the
cloned.
ones I put. But anyway, with that, you're looking at still and also the other thing too is back in 87, 88,
Mm-hmm.
one DC Comics went through and did backups again too, as a way of padding out the new continuity. But after the crisis, because that's that. But anyway, with those, you have where you have to tell the compelling story in that length of time, and I think that makes a real challenge. I think it's good for a creator to have those kind of restrictions.
Yeah, so like it brings up, because I'm actually working on a serious superhero story now, and I'm hoping to launch it at some point. And I'm actually doing 4-pagers, which is even very restricting, because it's basically like the four panels in some ways. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, except I'm trying to tell action pieces. But it's one of the best things that I've done in terms of disciplining myself and learning how the process works. Because when you start because there's different types of comic book making. You've got the kind of what Taylor and I do, which is basically like, duo, writer, artist. And since I live like really close to his house, like I could drive up there and like be like, Taylor, do the comic or whatever. And he can basically text me and say, where's the darn script, you slacker? So like, we have a great working relationship. But when you get to the point where you're trying to do what's, I guess I would call it assembly comics, there's a huge learning curve. And I'm actually kind of like dealing with some of that right now. So having like small pieces of writing, as opposed to being like, here's my graphic novel I want to make. Like, oh my gosh, like you definitely want to put some training wheels in that process first there, boy.
Well, yeah, and also make sure that you actually have enough content for a graphic novel. That's one of the things that I think a lot of people do is they don't quite get the right amount of content for the right amount of pages. And one of the things that we did early on in our company is our print anthologies. We've got 2 of them, and those are our 8 to 12 page stories that just take place within our universe. And so in honing and in finessing those stories as a company and as writing partners, and I'd edit, I'd write a story and Chris would edit, Chris would write a story and I'd edit, just beat each other up until it was right.
Yep.
And then we'd try to find an artist who would be willing to work with, what was left afterwards.
Good storytelling is violence.
Yeah.
So
it is. It really is. I think all art is struggle, because what I believe what art actually is that it is a society holding a mirror up to itself and deciding, for the same reasons you hold a mirror to yourself. You want to make sure you look right. You want to make sure that you're not, bleeding out the eyeballs, all that kind of stuff. The society is the same way. We hold we
live in a society.
Well, of course we do. We hold our art up to our society to see if our society is functional and if it's ready to go out in the morning and face the world and all that kind of stuff. So
I'm glad. There's another thing you brought up that I think is also under the hood, which is really important, which is just sometimes it's just the little stuff that you pick up. But I remember when I was getting started with just talking about comic book collaborations, and someone basically said, oh, well, you have to do everything in 4-page blocks. And it was like, well, why? And it's like, well, that's because how comic book pages work. So that's why stories tend to be 4, 8, 12, and so on, unless you start adding in ads. But basically, you have to deal with multiples of 4. And so, like, if you want to get into comics, that's actually one of the first things you need to know is that planning out your pages, you need to be planning out pages pretty much in 4-page blocks. and you need to pay attention to where your first page is and where your paired pages are. Because if you want to do a double page spread, but the pages are misaligned, it doesn't work. So like there's just some basic things like that are just real simple when you kind of like think about it, but it's just stuff that like wouldn't necessarily occur to you when you first get started with it. And it certainly would be a very painful mistake if you like started paying real money and and then like, my double page spread is on two separate pages that don't actually are on the same opposite, basically.
Yeah.
Liefeld figured out how to get around it. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Taylor, if you're mean to Rob, he'll block you on Twitter.
Hey, how many times have we made fun of Rob already on our?
See, I stopped though. I grew up, and I wanted to. I wanted him to unblock me on Twitter. I think I have two Twitter accounts. He has me blocked on one Twitter account, and I don't know. Well, I think it's because of who I follow. Because block bots are stupid, and so like if you follow an account, you can get put on a block list. So I think I follow somebody who's on like Rob's block list.
I gotcha.
On one of my Twitter accounts, because I think I have never interacted, I think, with him.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say, like, everybody knows someone famous. If you can say I was blocked by Rob Liefeld, that's.
Actually, I really okay. So I do have to say this, which is, it was fun to poke fun at him here and there, but I will say that like I think it's gone overboard, and because like. I would rather talk to Rob than a lot of comic book professionals currently working in the industry today. Because if you listen to the guy, he's just like a regular dude. He's like, I love Deadpool. Oh, I love comics. And it's like, can you really hate somebody who's just loves the medium? It's kind of, it's like kicking a puppy.
I find it very easy to love people that hate people that love Deadpool. That's
well, okay. No, actually, that's hot take number 2, which is fandom is toxic and should die.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I actually don't necessarily agree with that there, but there are some things that just don't deserve the praise. And
let me clarify. So my hot take is basically, and again, one day I'll make a video on this. No, I won't. My hot take is the fact that we need to eliminate the concept of fandom and bring back the concept of enthusiast, because like words, I'm an English major, so I pay attention to words. And so to me, words mean things, and the word fan is short for fanatic. And so, and again, when you actually look at fan culture, it really is fanaticism. It's excessive devotion to a particular idea. And what that's translated to in our culture is basically fanatic cult-like devotion to corporate brand. That's why and it's like people like clap like orc seals for like, corporate product X. And that's the thing that
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, again,
Disney fanatic.
It's bad for it is my position. One day I'll have to have a debate or something on this. But it is my position that fandom is actually bad for the thing it supposedly is it's in support of. So I don't think that Marvel fandom is actually good for Marvel. And that's why I think you have situations like was it Joe Quesada posted something on Twitter, and he was like, he was mocking people who were saying the comic book industry was dying. And he took a picture of a comic book fan convention. He's like, look at all these people. Oh, comics are dying. And it was like, no, they are. Like the sales are plummeting down the hole. And just because you can get a bunch of fans to like clap for the next Marvel movie doesn't mean that the comics are in any way being supported by this. So
that's one of the things. Actually, the comics are being supported by it, because as long as the properties make the corporation money, they'll keep Marvel's doors open. That's how that works out.
Well, but the
Marvel itself even if Marvel itself is a loss leader, it's enough to keep.
Right? Yeah, exactly. But in my opinion, I think we need to bring back
the thing is, I don't think it's necessarily that that fan culture is the problem. I think it's that people don't really understand why a thing is a thing, right? Like the Marvel movies, there are two kinds of people watching Marvel movies, right? There are the people that are into the popcorn flick aspect of it, and then there's old geeks and their kids, right? But the old geeks and their kids movies, because up until Infinity War, they were relatively honest adaptations of the symbols behind the stories. So you could go watch, Winter Soldier and get an actual Captain America story, or to buy an actual Captain America story, you had to go to the dollar bin, because they weren't making comics with those characters anymore up until, I mean, and that's part of the thing. So I think that's
Right.
the reason that they're successful isn't just that they're the brand. I think that there's a large part of it is that those are better adaptations.
So again, I would say that you're actually supporting my point from a debate standpoint, because the point that I want to make is that there is, I see this debate happen a lot on Twitter because some people will bring up that clip of the guy, the man-child who cries over the Star Wars trailer, and he's like weeping and he's doing like orking like a seal, and someone says, "You're an adult. Stop acting like a child." And then this other person will say, "Oh, let him enjoy things. You're a killjoy." And it's like, these are two separate debates. Okay. I enjoy things. I enjoy Marvel. I enjoy Spider-Man. Notice keyword here, because words are important. They mean things. I am an enthusiast for superheroes. I'm enthused by them. I enjoy them. I enjoy them a great deal. I am not a fan. And as of when I made this weird manifesto to myself, because I'm a lunatic, as of that time, I will no longer call myself a fan of anything. I'm an enthusiast for things. And I feel like if we dialed things back to the point of enthusiast, I think we would start making a different inroads in terms of popular culture. Because if you think about it, Star Wars right now is basically conquering the entirety of the science fiction imagination. It's eating all of it up, because everyone is just fanatically devoted to it. If people were just like, I'm a science fiction enthusiast, we could maybe get another IP in there somewhere and like not just have everyone just like magnetized to one IP, because that's what fanaticism is. That's what fan culture is. Because again, the root word is fan. Corporations, I worked for a corporation at one point, and that was their goal. We want stark raving fans for our product, because that's when they win. When they get to sell and they because it's instant sale. If you have a fanatic, they will instantly buy the thing, even if it's a terrible product. But if you'll notice over time, fanaticism does not encourage growth. Fanaticism does not encourage development and innovation. It encourages people just blindly consuming product. And that's why I think over time you see the franchises inevitably decaying no matter how good they are. Because fan culture, and again, I really do maintain this, fan culture is toxic. So when some people have said, "Oh, fan culture ruined Star Wars," I'm like, you're kind of right. There's a bunch of other stuff going on there too. But I really think we need to bring back a distinction between enjoyment, enthusiasm, and fanaticism. And I very much staunchly oppose fan culture from that standpoint alone. So there's my cranky little hill I'll die on. Fight me.
There you go. That's well, you convinced the metal. So there you go. He's a fairly thoughtful guy. So that.
Woohoo! I have one person who believes my side. Therefore, I win.
There you go. So
logical.
So, how long? Let's dial this back a little bit, and just for each of you, how long have you guys been interested in comics?
That is an interesting question. On one hand, I bought my first comic book, I think, when I was like 25. On the other hand, I can't even tell you how young when I started reading Tintin comics. So, I was not what you would call a comic book fan for the longest time. But I've always been a cartoon fan. I shouldn't be saying this word, should I?
It's fine. You don't have to be subjected to Taylor's worldview just because.
I have found myself.
But you do have to be subjected to mine.
I have found myself a consumer of a lot of different things in a lot of different areas. And somewhere in there, at times, that did include a lot of comics or graphic novels or other such things. But it wasn't until I was an adult, really, that I actually just said, I should step into a comic book store and see what they have in there.
Taylor loves Disney.
Yes. Yeah. I will say that I am probably more a fan of comic book, TV and movies, and even video games in many areas. But because of a lot of the stuff I dealt with when I was a kid, I became a writer and an artist myself. So of course, this kind of in some ways became the natural route for me to take. I could have been an animator, but things did not work out that way. And I'm looking back, I'm kind of glad I did not end up in a job where I spend 90 hours a week drawing the same variation on the same image for 300 times an hour. So
I was gonna say, Taylor, you're roboting a little bit.
What do you mean?
Like you're, I don't know if it's your connection.
Am I cutting in and out?
A little bit.
Oh, okay. I can't hear myself at all. That's the odd thing about this.
That is weird.
Actually, we might want to do a check on this. Like, who's coming in clearly?
That's true. Let the chat decide.
All right, so I can hear you, Rhys.
Well, I forgot. Only just the other day, I got a new headset. Let me try that.
Oh, so now you're coming in great. Maybe it's where were you sitting?
I've had a crummy headset for a while.
You're good now.
I bought a new one the other day.
You're good now. I hear you fine now. Maybe it's just
I adjusted my seat. I probably moved the cord just a little bit, and it did something.
It could have been a lag spike. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure we produce a very entertaining terrible stream as opposed to a terrible stream.
There you go. So Twitless, where do you feel like? I mean, how long have you been interested in comics?
Oh, geez.
Even I don't know the answer to this one.
All right, so basically, it's very, very little. My mother and father had a bunch of old comics. I read a bunch of those. My mom threw them away after she was because she thought they were bad for your brain, which she's right. So there was that. So there was that, and then I was watching the Batman animated series and the X-Men cartoon, and so that started my enthusiasm for superheroes. and I was and I love them almost as much as Godzilla, which is always my first love. And it's the only thing I will say that I'm almost a fan of, but I'm not a fan of anything because that's bad. But I still have Godzillas all over my house, so I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm a strong enthusiast of that.
If I may just point out that in that game you created, you would not allow Godzilla to actually play because of the fact that he might lose. I think you're a fan.
No, I was. I'm a recovering fan because I'm not a fan of it. Because
I'm a recovering Godzilla.
I mean, I'm still a huge enthusiast. I really, I'm a killjoy. I know, but it's just like,
He's got the patch.
I just don't want to be a fan of anything anymore, just because I think I don't want to kill it. I don't want to become a Godzilla fan and then mindlessly consume Godzilla content and then watch it. I like Godzilla enough that I want it to be good. And I think that once you become a fan, you turn off switches in your head. And because I think any fanatic does. When you look at like religious fanatics or like political fanatics, it's like they've switched off parts of their brains that are critical.
Well, I don't know. There's no group of fans in the world that hates their own stuff. I mean, hates their own fandom more than Star Wars fans, right? Because
it's very strong fanaticism. These are the people that cry when they see trailers.
Right, people who just love this stuff get super critical about it at the same time.
See, I don't think they're fanatics then, because a lot of the people who've been the most critical have been, I think, the most non-fanatically devoted to it. That's where I think they're more because when you look at Red Letter Media, the Plinkett reviews, they're big enthusiasts into like science fiction. Like they like Star Trek and they like Star Wars, but they've been able to take a little bit of this is not fun. Let's have more. let's do more fun conversations. Let's talk about comics.
I think there's something sense to that, but at the same time, I think part of what drives a lot of the this is the other side of it, but I think what drives a lot of the I want to say the current crop of outrage marketeers, but the last crop of outrage marketeers has to do a lot with people being dedicated to the quality of a product or the appearance of quality in former days that is held up to by the current crop of them. I think you look at people that were bashing on Marvel Comics during the whole Jane Foster Thor thing. I because that's a stupid idea. In fact, I just had a conversation with somebody earlier today about how dumb that was.
Mhm.
It's cultural appropriation of the worst sort. It really is. Really, Thor is to go off on that. Thor is a representative of masculine energy. He's the in the Norse concept. He represents the male side of society.
No,
And
he's totally a beta male. What are you talking about?
For him to be represented, for Thor to be represented by a woman is absolutely insulting. It would literally be like, it's actually like Caitlyn Jenner winning Woman of the Year. That's exactly all of the best women are men. It's exactly the same thing.
Wow.
Well, Shakespeare
I'm sorry. Did I take the wrong turn and end up on Dick Masterson's stream?
I've never seen it, so I can't comment.
Okay.
But no, I mean, that's one of those things about it. But anyway, back to the thing is, I think a lot of that you have this level of fanaticism for the quality that was. But I think the problem you have is I think some people, when I look a lot at the current crop of outrage merchants, a lot of those are people that are disingenuous in their criticisms, and so that they are simply there to prolong the anger of people that are marginally upset but don't completely understand why.
Okay, so when you say outrage merchants, do you mean the people who bank on the outrage and so stoke the fires?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna
Are you referring to the creators themselves? Like
no.
Well,
I think in some cases, I think you look at like to name names. When Kate Leth was writing Hellcat, she did a lot to try to make everybody who disagreed with her seem like an evil person.
I gotcha. Okay.
So we're talking about like
in other words, getting people angry on your behalf.
Right. Exactly.
So like the SJ Mark.
And so I think it could be that kind of thing can be firsthand or secondhand, right? Mm-hmm. So when you look at like at like somebody who's creating art, and it's like, well, people are complaining that art isn't good, so they must be hateful bigots. Hey, you guys that like it, go ahead and tell them they're hateful bigots. That's a kind of outrage merchant, right?
Gotcha. Okay. The milk.
But also, if somebody is in the
days.
At the same time, if somebody's in the commentariat and they are critiquing a work, and they rather than talk about what's really good and what's really bad about it, they're sitting there just bashing on everything because they know it's clickbait.
Mm-hmm.
And that stokes the fire of other people that are dissatisfied, who may not really understand why they're dissatisfied with it. And that's another outrage merchant.
As an outrage merchant, I am outraged at your outrage and outrage. I've gotten real meta here. I actually I tinkered with that myself when I first started a YouTube channel because that was the thing, but I quickly dropped it. Where I'm at now is I just kind of want to make my own stuff, and I want people to like the stuff I want to make. I'm just terrible at marketing, so
I think that goes very hand in glove with the creative aspect. It's every minute you spend telling somebody about how great your product is, the less time you're actually making it, and I know I personally have a struggle with that, just because it's like I have too many ideas and not enough life to get them done in, and you want me to stop in midstream and talk about how awesome it is. I just don't really have time for that.
Thinking of which, I'm supposed to be making a comic right now.
Somebody just brought up Warhammer. Yes,
I was noticing that.
I've actually started to dip my toe into Warhammer, and I really want to see again. That's my problem with Star Wars. It's like Star Wars has dominated the sci-fi imagination for like 30 years. It's like time for someone else to get a turn, because I want to see some either Warhammer or Mass Effect or something that's new. Because it's just like, oh, here's Star Wars again. It's like, oh, just pluck my eyes out. Even if it's good, I don't care anymore. Give me something just different.
Yeah.
I'm alienating people by the ones.
Yeah, well, we're a small show, so don't worry about that too.
Come on, I think everybody and their mother is angry at Star Wars right now.
I mean, for different reasons at this point, but
I think there's that's true, and I think there's people that specifically avoid the cinematic outings, but have good things to say about the Mandalorian.
Oh, come on.
I haven't seen it either.
You know what? I
just don't care.
I wanted to pin a medal on Rian Johnson for the fact that he killed Star Wars. Just for that, because I was like, finally we can get something new. And then like it won't die. They're like, the Mandalorian's good, and I'm like, no, let it die, please, for the love of all that is holy, please let Star Wars die. And I know that I feel like Rian Johnson was I feel like he pulled the biggest Metal Gear Solid. Does anyone know Metal Gear? Am I talking
No,
nerd?
I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so do you know how like in if you've played, I think it's the last Metal Gear, the last real Metal Gear, it gets revealed that Big Boss was like a quadruple agent to take down the corporation thing that ran the world, and it's basically like what Rian Johnson did when he basically directed The Last Jedi. He was like whether he knows it or not, he was a quadruple agent to bring down the controlling IP of Disney, and it's like I salute you, sir. For your service of killing Star Wars, but it's like, no, it's still alive. We have the Mandalorian now. And I'm like, no.
I mean, in all fairness, people don't actually like the Mandalorian. They just like Baby Yoda.
But that's the thing. Like they just slapped, Disney has this secret weapon, and I know it's a secret weapon because it works on Taylor. And it's like, it's the Disney eyes. They slap the Disney eyes on it, and it's like, and people just go, oh, it's so cute. Okay. And they just, and they're right back to fandom right back.
I'm going to combat that idea while simultaneously becoming the most unpopular person on the internet.
They slapped Disney eyes on a Yoda, and that's why Star Wars lives.
I do not like Baby Yoda. Okay? Baby Yoda is not cute, people. Get over it.
Anyway.
No context.
See,
whatever.
And here's the thing, is that even us hating on Star Wars is still giving Star Wars more clout. So, like, let's talk about something else.
Yeah. So, well, I think my personal interest in Star Wars is largely its position in mythic storytelling. And the original trilogy had it, the prequel trilogy did not. And so at that point, it has interest to me as a cultural touchstone, but it no longer interests me as a franchise. I think that's fair. And I think that, you know, the whatever Star Wars had was already carried forward into other properties that, you know, have gotten, you know, not quite as much attention or whatever at that point. But I think that's already done with. And that's one of the things, like, I know there are certain class of people that really hate on superhero comics because they think they're kidding and that there's such a fanaticism about them, to speak to your but you know, my defense writ large of superhero stories is that they're just exaggerated metaphor. That's all they are. They're myths. That's all.
Right.
See, you're taking the intellectual route. I just like it when they punch stuff.
Well, yeah, there's a reason you like it why they punch stuff, though. That's the issue. So,
I forgot. Taylor, he works in mental health. Don't say anything personal, or he'll analyze you. We're already done for. He already knows too much.
No, I'm unlicensed. Don't worry about it. No, that's actually true. I operate under my boss's license. That's a thing in our state.
So, really?
Yeah. Because I'm not a counselor. I'm a support worker. Mm-hmm. Basically, like a glorified life coach with some mental health training.
Gotcha. But
I work under my boss's licensure. So yeah.
So how much of that goes into a webcomic?
Actually, kind of a lot, but not the way you'd think. I'm good at my job because I'm a student of human nature.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much because I know the names of stuff. In fact, our company policy has to do more with helping people learn to empower themselves and know what they're great at and what they're passionate about, and help them turn their skills against their own deficits, right? So it's very much about being personally empowered and knowing who you are. So my kind of meet people where they're at and, you know, talk to them, not necessarily through their problems, but through the things that they love, the things they're passionate about.
Right.
Is a skill that I use in writing, because I create these people that don't exist, and I figure what their motivations are and how it works on all that stuff. There are certain of our stories where we've I've discovered they kind of have a mental health focus that I didn't necessarily intend, but that's because I don't want to say the power of positive thinking, because that's what the hell does that mean? But I do think that we own our choices, and by owning our choices, we build our futures. And yeah. Oh, hey, Lorenzo Sleestack has joined in the chat and says hello to all of us.
Hello, everyone.
It's the greatest Sleestack in the world, Ninja said, which I think is probably true. I think that may be a true statement. Yeah. So yeah, I don't, like I said, I mean, one of the things that comes up and forces a lot, we have several characters that come from broken families. And that is a factor as these kids are trying to, because we're dealing with seniors and juniors and seniors in high school, and then with the future impending upon them, even if they're superheroes or if they're turning to be superheroes or whatever. That's a factor. Was how do they build a life when they've never built a life? That's a subtext in some of the stories, too. But yeah, I try not to get too heavy on a lot of that stuff, except when I do.
Gotcha.
So,
see, Logan, that's called world building.
I know how to build worlds. I could do it. The thing. I'm good word.
I know you can.
Well, no, and see, and actually, that's one of the things that I enjoy about your comic is just how, like, in contrast to mine, I like reading back through mine again too because I'm an egotist. But
you join the club. That's being a writer.
Yeah, I think so. Because there's two kinds of writers. There's that like everything I've written is crap, and then there's that are just I'm probably a genius.
See, here's the unspoken truth though. The ones who say that everything I've written is crap are actually the first type of writer. They just won't admit it.
Yeah.
That's like 100% true. It's like everything I've written is crap. I'm a secret underappreciated genius, and when I die, someone will notice.
I'm Melville. Shh.
Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say.
Wait. No. He was gonna say something that he appreciated about my writing.
Oh, sorry.
I did.
Yes, I'm going to humbly let him
speak. One of the things
speak.
I appreciate in juxtaposition to Forces, since I've read both of them, is that we have a lot of rules that we don't cross. That because they're part of our bigger universe and the kind of stories we want to tell. Time travel only works one way in our universe. It's only forward. You can't travel back in time. Right? That's one of our rules.
Right.
There's there's a limit to just kind of stuff like that. So you guys I've enjoyed seeing you take the freedom to just kind of tell insane, crazy, fun stories, whatever kind of thing fits the joke best. And I think that's a freedom that's fun to watch, even if I don't feel like it fits with.
Oh yeah. It's funny because like I was actually gonna be. It's funny because Taylor's like, I was actually gonna be the more straightforward with this time travel, and then Taylor was like, well, how about he just hits him in the next week?
No, Logan, you said you were the one who wanted your regular show. I know. I happened to come up with one.
He did. I'm just saying that, like, originally for our most recent storyline, which has time travel, I was gonna go the more traditional route with it, and then Taylor said, "How about he just hits them so hard they go back in time?" And I was like, "That's so stupid. It's brilliant." And it was like, let's do that. It's hilarious.
Well, the joke was the knocking into next week.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So if you hit him the other way, it's into last week.
Right.
But I mean, if you think about it, it's like
Superman 2 ending.
Exactly.
The right hand versus the left hand.
Just as stupid as what has actually been done in superhero comics. So fight.
That is true. That is true.
We just acknowledge that it's dumb.
Oh, that does frustrate the hell out of me.
Oh gosh, we're gonna have Captain America say "Hail Hydra," aren't we?
No, you don't have to. You can do all kinds of stuff. So you guys have what are there any books or comics that you guys are reading right now?
I have about 2/3 of my comic collection that I still have to actually catch up on reading right now. No, I just started because Logan shamed me into reading the copy of Redwall.
Because I bought it for him like last Christmas.
What was it? Redwall?
Redwall, yeah.
With the little animals
In comic book form.
Yeah, they did a comic. Okay. It's actually got really good art. I bought it for him last Christmas.
Birthday, but close enough.
Yeah. I'm a weeb, so I'm reading a bunch of manga.
No, I've never. This is actually interesting. I have never read a complete manga. In fact, I've read some Japanese comics that have been in other stuff, but I've never really it's never been something I've dipped my toe in. I really think that Marmaduke fan, who's been on my show a couple times, makes fun of me for being afraid of Asian comics, and I'm like, no, I just don't find them interesting.
So I think you need to find the right one, because it's really because I've noticed, because I've watched some of your work, and I've seen you comment, because I follow you on Twitter, and one of the things I've noticed
that's
you
a
talk
scary
about,
proposition.
Well, it's scarier than following me.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the thing is crazy about this. Not to make it about me, because I do want to hear what you have to say about.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, make it all about you.
Yeah. The funny thing is like, I have almost 700 people following me on Twitter, and it's humbling, but I also don't understand it, because I think I would be afraid to follow my feed if I wasn't me. I spend entirely too much time talking about things that matter with people that don't understand it. That's my take anyway.
What happened to the regular chat?
Wow, I lost it for a second, and now it's back.
I see it.
Oh, there it is. Okay, it disappeared for a second. All right. I've tried to get followers on Twitter. I have no idea what the secret is, so I'm just gonna like die in obscurity. One day.
Say something controversial.
What were we talking about? I say so many controversial things. I say things
about manga.
I say things like, "Hi, Doug Tanaple. I like Earthworm Jim." That's
only a little bit. It's liking Earthworm Jim is not enough to be controversial. Saying, "Man, this 7-pound box that got sent to me might be the best packaged box I've ever received
on God's green earth,"
and it was really fun to open because of all the fun jokes on it. That's controversial.
Okay, no. So I was saying about manga back before you interrupted me for your narcissism. It's your show. I mean, own it.
I gotta own it. I know who I am.
All right. So I was gonna say that as a fan of myth and that just like archetypal storytelling, I would encourage you to try and find a manga because there's so many. And everyone has their own recommendations. So like I could throw you a few of mine, but like it's like everyone has them. But there's a couple things I think that because sometimes when people have this conversation, they're like, "Oh, it becomes like Japanese comics are superior to Western comics." It becomes like another fandom nonsense, which I think is dumb. But I would say that there's some objective facts that need to be addressed when we consider these things. First off, manga is growing in audience and superhero comics are declining in audience. Yeah. Unit sales are down. They're down like every single year. It's been a consistent trend, which means that even if the comics are making more money because they're charging more for them, it's not translating into more people picking them up. And that's an objective fact. Like you can pretty much verify it anywhere. For most Western comics as a whole, apart from what Raina Telgemeier or somehow just, I don't know, she just owns Scholastic or something. But for superheroes, at least, it's a declining readership, whereas manga seems to be increasing. It's in the West. When you say
manga, are you saying strict manga, or are you including like any kind of anime graphic novel?
I'm talking manga, just like animated
written
manga.
In Japanese. Printed backwards compared to Western stuff.
Well, even the English
black and white.
I'm talking about the English translations. When they
translate.
One
of the funny things about that too is like you look at like how wildly successful My Hero Academia has been,
right? Mm-hmm. Which is superheroes done in
totally
manga.
Superheroes. It's totally, and it's right. I mean, and that's one of the things that is an interesting thing, and one of the things that Marv and I have talked a little bit about And also actually next week, a #1 Marmaduke fan and Matt Krotz are going to be on. And we're just going to talk about comics just for an hour or two. And we don't really have a set topic. We're just gonna shoot the breeze. But Matt grew up.
It's better than shoot. Actually, I was gonna say it's less good than shooting Marmaduke.
Well, yes, I wouldn't want to.
From the comic, I meant
from the comic,
the
yeah.
comic strip character. I didn't mean
No,
actually shoot.
Marm's a big manga guy, and he just goes on about that. I don't know if you follow him or not, but and
I've seen him around.
Matt's read a lot of the European books, and I'm a superhero guy. But part of my take on it is I think a lot of it has to do more with delivery mechanism than content, and also that finding a kid-friendly book that is actually written so that kids want to read it is super difficult.
So the thing that I
They're
like,
not where people and like American comics aren't where kids are going to get them. I mean, their comic shops are skeezy.
You're right.
I don't let my children go in by themselves.
What discerning adult would? And that's part of the problem. But what I was going to say is the fact that, and this is why I think that because manga is showing growth, there are things that the Western superhero market can learn. And I think that when Western and when American culture has done the best, it's when we are doing what we're best at, culturally appropriating. And so we need to just fully embrace that and culturally appropriate some more. And one of the things that I've noticed that manga does really well is they're really good at genre. Like if you like it, they not only have it, they have 10 of it. So like one of the things is called isekai.
Right.
Yeah, weeb alert.
No, that's actually I'm familiar with the genre, and there's actually a project that Marm and I are kind of back burnering that we might work on together. That isn't.
So the
So
point
I
is,
am not. So you will have to explain.
right. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is isekai is a subgenre, and it's a storyline that has like the exact same setup every time and just different twists in it. And the setup is that somebody from one world, usually the real world, gets sent into another world, typically a fantasy world. Right. And most of the time, the way this plays out is that he's like a dweeb and an idiot and powerless in our world. And when he gets sent into the next world, he's like super powered. It's like the plot of like 90% of the isekais. But like people eat it up. And so Japan just goes, okay, and we're going to make 100 of these. And then there's like one of them that's like a little bit different and twists the trope or whatever. But there's like, if you love this idea, they've done it like 900 times. And so
the funny thing is that that's just Superman.
Well, sure, but like it's a very particular setup, and it's often a fantasy thing. But people who are into that particular thing eat it up. And if like and if it's a thing, and it could be a adventure thing, it can be a romantic, it could be just a flat out sexual thing. Whatever it is, Japan's like, if you want it, we got it. If you want a story where people turn into cats, we've got an entire like subgenre for that. If you want to, it's just whatever it is, they've got the genre for it. And it's if you think about it, it's like excellent customer service. And it's kind of the opposite of what, and it's kind of what I think has created, it helped create at least, I think, the countercultural movement here. Because what Marvel started doing was, oh, you want it? We're going to do the opposite of what you want. You want Thor to be masculine? We're going to make him into a woman. Ha, eat that, you incels. And it was like, okay, I'll stop reading your book then. Whereas, like I said, across the pond, it's like, oh, you like the masculine heroes with like big muscles? We'll do like 1,000 of those. Which one do you want? It's like, it's just, it's a very different kind of approach. And again, I think we could learn from that. I don't want to just say, oh, manga's superior to comics.
Well, and one of the things that really frustrates the hell out of me, right, is being a man of a certain age and spending a lot of time at the quarter bins as a kid and, scoping garage sales for stacks of old comics and all that kind of stuff. Because I've got comics, from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all that kind of stuff. And American comics used to be like that. There were the ghosts.
I was thinking as he was saying that, I was thinking about all the experimental superheroes back in like the
even in the 90s they were folding like fantasy and the basically the isekai story is not far from Warlord from I'm trying to remember the dude's name, the writer artist Mike Grell. Mike Grell's Warlord. Kind of concept. And it had it was John Carter from Mars, but in the middle of the Earth, and
Sure, yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
That's when comics does its best work, and like I said,
that's one of those things where we had these kind of things. Now we want to make, we're going to make everything this one thing and not what the customer wants. And that's one of the things where, so we're not appealing to universal mythic themes. We're not instructing or teaching anything. And that's the other thing about comics. They wanted to make them all grown up in the late 90s, getting the wrong lessons from Watchmen, trying to make them mature instead of realizing that mythic stories are for instruction.
Watchmen is overrated.
I don't think Watchmen's. Honestly, here's the thing: I don't think
take
Watchmen's
number 9.
overrated.
Well,
I don't think Watchmen's overrated. It's entirely misunderstood.
Logan used to be a huge fan of Alan Moore. I don't know what happened.
I started. I'm trying to remember what it was. It doesn't matter right now, but I think the thing with Watchmen is that everybody looked at Watchmen and said, "Oh, he deconstructed superheroes. That's edgy and cool, and let's do that for 20 years."
Right.
Forgetting that the last 3 pages is a entire reconstruction of the superhero genre, and people missed that.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it's maybe a reconstruction. What I would say is that it's Alan Moore refusing to allow himself to, because he does this several times. In an interview, Alan Moore said that he hated the word religion because when you go to the root word religion, it means bound together. And he said, I thought that was really creepy to bind things together. And so I decided to worship Glycon, the snake god, because at least if I had to worship a god, I was going to choose him. And he had a comb over, and that was a real rock star looking god. So basically, Alan Moore rejects ultimate truth, and he rejects religion. And I'm not commenting specifically on those points, but he certainly does. But the problem is that when you make that sort of rejection, you have to substitute your own reality. Well, the problem is that when you do that and you have a greater hope for a world, what have you therefore done? And so what Alan Moore, because Alan Moore's smart enough to realize this, is that every time he basically substituted his own reality and his own utopian vision, he was basically creating his own religion, which is a binding together. And so one thing I've noticed that he does this in Miracle Man, he does this in V for Vendetta, he does this in Watchmen, is that he can't, it's like there's something in him that won't allow him to create his own perfect world. And every time there's something in it that holds it back, that undermines it, that deconstructs it. So he creates a world peace in Watchmen, but then the seeds for undoing that world peace are already set in motion. In Miracle Man, he has Miracle Man rewrite the world to be a perfect utopian society, but then have we lost our humanity? And am I just basically forcing my own way on things? In V for Vendetta, it's the world of do as you please, but it's basically, women are going to get raped in that world. So it's again, I feel like it's the conundrum of when you reject God, you have to become God, but then you become the thing that you hate. And I think Alan Moore really I think acknowledges his own issues with that. But I
think that's probably a fair reading of the psychology behind that. But
I just think that he's good, but I think some people put him on a pedestal. That's why I think he's overrated.
No, I absolutely think so. And here's part of the thing. I guess I'll go into this. I talked about this about a year ago. I had Pope Fire on. We were talking about when we thought comics got ruined. Because the whole question about when did DC and Marvel start mucking things up? When was that? And I think it was very early.
I you know what? When I finally read Mark Millar's Civil War, I actually think that might have been a tipping point.
No, that was the death knell. It had already happened.
Very well, but when Civil War happened, it really oof.
So because here's the thing is I didn't read Civil War because when it was out.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys want to go through the archives, I had I made a snarky comment on Twitter and Marm guffed at me, and so I had him on and we had a discussion of Civil War, and it was actually something, but a Civil War was garbage. And
oh yes, thank you. It is.
it is.
It's trash.
It was the last time. See, when it was new, when I was in my 20s, late 20s, it doesn't matter.
In case anyone's confused, we're talking about the comic, not the movie.
Yeah, the comic, not the movie. The movie was great.
I think the movie's overrated too.
I like the movie.
I am nothing but hot takes.
No, but
I'm never coming back. It's okay.
So I hadn't read Civil War because the premise was so contrary to the Marvel universe. It is the fundamental supposition of a superhero universe is that individuals maintain governmental autonomy to enact justice on behalf of those who cannot themselves defend themselves. Right? That's a fundamental presupposition of all superhero comics, that superheroes can exist, that not only in terms of powers but in terms of legal authority. Right? That if Superman stops a volcano from erupting and saves lives, that's a good thing. The minute you say, no, we're going to do this universe-wide main continuity, we're going to make it so that everyone's sketchy, you've just unraveled the entire universe and broken it.
So for me, it was the
It's different if you're doing an enclosed story like The Incredibles, right? Where they have an enclosed story that doesn't impact a larger mythology and a larger history and everything else, but you don't get to have Kurt Busiek's Marvels and 5 years later do Civil War and say that's okay, because it's not. Those two things cannot coexist within the same framework.
So Neostar just said, how do you have a civil war with only 12 people? Answer, it's very short.
There was more like
it's a very short war. The campaign is like 10 seconds.
Yeah. That's
anyway, I think Civil War is far more, though, the symptom, not the problem.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It was a symbol that it had already been broken. But let me hang on a second. I gotta show you here. Since I'm here. Be right back.
Cool.
Oh, it's like a curtain. Okay. I'm now the host of the show. Look at me. I'm the captain now. All right.
5 seconds and you're already power hungry.
I mean, are you surprised?
No.
Okay, so I'm gonna read some chat here. So Neostar says, "Be right back," but then he came back, so that was definitely a while ago. One Punch Man has better deconstruction and reconstruction of the genre than Watchmen. I've seen some One Punch Man. Some of it's cool. I'm not the biggest fan of characters that are that overpowered. That sometimes bores me.
I've never seen it, but my understanding is that's what they're actually.
I know it is, but I still kind of I'm just kind of towards it. It's the reason why I stopped watching Overlord after the first season. I was just like, oh, he's just going to be this overpowered the whole show. And I'm just like, it just kind of killed some of my... I like stakes. I really like stakes.
That's why I don't like a lot of anime in general, if I may be so bold to say.
Oh, sorry. Okay, we're back to Civil War. Okay.
Oh, boy, here we go.
Copy of Civil War in here.
Wait, should I go get my copy? My copy's upstairs.
I was so annoyed at this comic when I read it that I went through and I circled every instance or line of dialogue.
Oh, wow.
Acted directly contrary to their character in it.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought this up. Did you read...
So, and there on every page...
Good Lord.
Like on every third page, there's something that is so contrary to these characters. Like, the only reason this works is because Mark Millar destroyed every character he worked on. And like...
So I like Mark Millar when he's doing like his own thing and he's just kind of having fun with it, because I read Super Criminals and it was actually kind of fun because he just was like, hey, superheroes in Ocean's 11. I was like, hey, it's fun. But goodness Lord. So, okay, did you read... Okay, so the thing for me is I think before I read Civil War, I had read The New Warriors, which was a very
here we go.
A very cartoony superhero book, and the New Warriors. It's at the very beginning of Civil War. They're the ones who die, and it sets it all off. Yeah. And so the fact that you would take these very cartoony characters and then murder them, and that was
in order to murder them, right? They had to make them act contrary to their character, because they were cartoony, but they also weren't noobs, right? And they weren't glory hungry, and they weren't careless. They were silly in a silly thing, and then in order to do this, they had to make them callous and fame hungry and careless.
Right.
And I mean, Namora, for crying out loud, has been a mainstay of the Marvel universe at that point for 50 years, or Namorita, and they just ignored every bit of character development to make her the angry, careless chick.
So, the thing that I noticed with Civil War, and I think this plays into kind of what you're talking about, and it even plays into the things that Alan Moore was talking about, is tone. Tone's really important. And Mark Millar has a tone that fits the Punisher really well.
Right.
But he applied a tone, like, to me, Civil War is basically the tonal death of Marvel Comics, because it's like storytelling is a really funny thing, because it's basically, as a storyteller, you're an illusionist. Okay, so like, I'll give you an example. Oh man, do I have to use Star Wars as an example again? Okay, fine.
Yes.
All right, I'll do it. So if we talk about the Death Star, okay, the first Star Wars film, the Death Star blows up Alderaan, and although it is a terrible thing, the story just kind of is like, oh, that planet blew up, and Ben Kenobi is like, this is very bad. And so the storytellers kind of use their illusion misdirection powers to give you just enough attention on the destruction of this planet so that you feel just enough emotional impact to be invested in the story. In reality, if you blew up a planet, it would be such an unconscionable, genocidal move that, like, you would need to spend about an entire film series to unpack all of the emotions of what just happened, all of the genocide, all the extinct plant species, all the extinct animals. Oh my gosh, you've just killed everyone on a planet. But you see, as a storyteller, the storyteller gets to direct how much attention is spent. But once you pull attention to a particular thing, you can't undo it. Okay, so once you have a superhero snap someone else's neck, you have drawn the attention of the audience to that tonal thing, and now I'm there. So if you don't want me to be there, you're not supposed to show it, because you're the illusionist, you're the magician. You see what the magician allows you to see. And so what Mark Millar did in Civil War is he was like, okay, not only am I going to kill these people, it's going to be bloody. I'm going to show these characters like getting like heads kind of like caved in and like getting shot and bullets coming out the backside of their head. And it's like, that works fine for gritty realism and different types of stories. That tone works fine. There's a genre for everything. But for superheroes, this is a universe where we beat up the bad guys and put them in jail. The reason why the Punisher is kind of a silly character is the fact that if he ever wins, he kills people. But in Civil War, it was like, no, we're committing to the bit way too hard. And it was like, Reed Richards builds a robot that kills somebody. And it's like, you can't undo that. That's really bad. You know, you've ruined that character really bad.
And that's like, I actually think that universe died the minute that Kingdom Come was brought into the mainstream continuity.
Oh, geez.
I think Kingdom Come itself was a story that was okay, not really that great. It in itself is not bad, but when you look at
I liked it as its own thing, but it was an alternate universe.
Right,
it was
but
like,
the implications of that universe are that everybody fails. Everybody in the main universe has failed.
Mm-hmm.
And so all the stories you're reading monthly, they're all stories of failures, and everyone is a failure. And that's the presumption that you go in with it, is that everyone's a failure. And so it's the same thing with the sequel trilogy in Star Wars. In order for that to exist, everybody in the format we got from Abrams, everybody has to suck at their job.
Right, which is why it only works as an alternate universe. Which is why I think, like you said, the real problem is if you make Kingdom Come like canon.
And they did, and because Mark Waid was Mark Waid and Grant Morrison was Grant Morrison, and they said we'll call it Hyper Time and all stories are true. And then when all stories are true,
Grant. I have a rant for Grant. But Grant's another guy who he enjoys superheroes so much. I can't hold it too much against him, even though I think he fundamentally misunderstands what they are, which is funny because he's like made a career out of writing them. So I can't criticize that aspect of the fact. But
he's made a career out of destroying them. If you really get down to what he's done, with the exception of because I mean, Suicide Squad's just a destruction of characters. His Seven Soldiers was, I mean, he just took a giant stinky Duke all over DC continuity to make that sucker.
Yeah, he has no clue what he has no clue what he's doing, but it's like he's like a
baby.
baby.
He doesn't pay attention to the grand story at all. It's just his.
So I guess for me, it's like he's like
the X-Men.
Grant is like that kid who's like smiling as he's smashing your Lego thing you spent 5 hours making, but he's smiling while he does it because he's having a good time. So you're like, oh, Grant, you ruined my thing, but I can't be that mad at you. Like when Alan Moore even does
I'm just an angrier person than you. I don't know. Like
I read Super Gods and it was like, I don't know. I kind of like I had enough respect for him. And I've seen him in interviews and he's just like so excited. I'm having so much fun. And I'm like, I always give a little more, because there are people who like take pleasure in destroying things. Like, and you see it, you know? And it's like, I am having fun.
Right.
And these are the people like the outrage merchants who go on Twitter and they're like, I made your character gay, ha ha ha. And it's like, those are the ones I get mad at. Cause it's like, not only are you ruining it, but you're doing it on purpose. If you do it and you're like, you just don't understand it. Cause like, to be fair, Grant Morris, this is another thing I might actually like write on at some point, but it is my contention that American superheroes are a uniquely American cultural tradition.
Yes.
And so it's very difficult because like it would be like if I went to Scotland, which is where Grant Morrison's from, right? And I wanted to write a Celtic ballad, like it'd be very difficult for me to do that without being tonally inconsistent because I'm not Scottish. I would need to either learn a lot about Scottish culture or it would be like there would be something missing. There would be a soul of it that wouldn't be there because I'm not Scottish. Right. And so when the British invasion of comics happened, we got some interesting stories out of it. But I would maintain that most of the output from the British invasion is not actually superhero stories. It's stories about superhero stories. And the difference is the difference between a fairy tale.
One significant notable exception.
Okay, really?
James Robinson's Starman.
I don't know if I've read that one.
You need to. It's the single for my money. Mm-hmm. It is the single best contained long form superhero story ever.
Oh, those are some tall. Yeah. That's a tall order. I might disagree with you, but I'd be interested to see it.
The great thing about it is that it's the story of Jack Knight, who's a Gen X slacker who has whose father was a World War II character, and he doesn't want to live up to his father's legacy. He just wants to live his life and not deal with his daddy issues. But when his father is kidnapped by his arch nemesis and his brother is murdered, somebody's got to step up and save the day. And so Jack's the only person left to defend his city from this incursion of villains that's about to happen. And so he has to learn to be a hero, and in the process, he learns to be a man. And it's all about growing up and accepting responsibility, and
so essentially it's Spider-Man.
Learning to be a hero. It's kind of like Spider-Man, but Uncle Ben doesn't die. So my issue with my exposure to Starman was through JSA, which I really enjoyed. It's like it's Jeff Johns on JSA. It was the first story arc was co-plotted with Jeff Johns and James Robinson. So I really enjoyed Jeff Johns on JSA. It was just fun stuff, and it was different characters I wasn't used to. But so my exposure to Starman was there. My issue with Starman was that it did that British thing again. And again, this is one of my issues with the British approach is that they don't understand superheroes. And so they always kind of have to do their own Britishy thing. And it's like, oh, well, you and your colorful outfits, I'm just going to wear my slacks and, my jeans. And it's just like, oh, come on. Like it's like, right, but that's actually the thing about it is like, that's actually part of Jack's persona. And it's established very early on because he's not in it to be a hero. He's in it because no one else can. Sure, but to me his whole thing is like he's a punk rocker and a junk dealer, and the hero thing is something as the story goes on he grows into this role. But he starts off very against that. And the other thing about it is like at JSA, he's only in there for like 3 issues because that's wrapping down his series where he retires. He passed on to Stargirl, and retires.
and he goes off to have a life with his son and his wife, and you never see him again. He just
it's a good. I would I haven't read it, but I would very readily concede that it may be a great story. But I think there's a distinction even there between true superhero stories and stories that are tangential or about them. So it's like whenever a fairy tale has a very strict format, really, for how a fairy tale works. Now, people play with fairy tales all the time. Fables, I would say, is not a fairy tale. It's a story about fairy tales and twists and does different things. Once Upon a Time is not a fairy tale. It's a show that uses fairy tales as a well to draw from. And so I would say that some of the Brits who do it well, they draw from the well very well. Ha ha ha. But I would say that, I think it's very difficult for them to actually genuinely make a superhero story where you get the costume, the powers, and the storytelling that we make. And there's a lot of
I think that's okay.
I didn't say it was bad. I'm just saying that if you enjoy superheroes, I don't think you're really going to get them very much from the Brits, because they're gonna do something different. And that's, again, if that's your speed, that's fine. Because again, a superhero story has some very key elements to it. And it comes from our background as Americans. And one of those backgrounds is it's kind of what Rhys was saying earlier. So as Americans, we are very okay with a very odd status quo, where a character who has superhuman power would actually only catch bank robbers. And he wouldn't go, well, you know what? I'm going to change the laws around here. And every time like a British person like gets a hold of a superhero, it's like one of the first things he does. He's like, man, I got all this power. I'm going to remake society with it. And it's just like,
and it's just to further sell Starman, that's not on the table at all. Right. And I think it comes down to the whole 80s punk rock foundation that Robinson drew from, where the kid's half an anarchist anyway,
No, but
part of the thing for me why I have a big connection to it was, like I saw it when it first issue came out in '94 after Zero Hour, and I'd seen it on the shelves, but it was a little mature for me, right? When I was that age, it was just a little. I wasn't ready for because there's a little bit of nudity, a little bit of swearing, a little bit of sexuality, and it just wasn't something I wanted to put in my brain yet. So when I finally tucked in to settle into it, I was in my early 20s. I was just married. I was about to be a father. I had all kinds of problems with my dad. I was into punk rock. So I was the Gen X kid who was into punk rock. I was reading the stories about the Gen X.
You would have loved Linkin Park if it had come out at the time.
I feel like every time you do that, Logan, you're like bolding your words.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. So that was one of the things where I was like, it was really resonating with me.
He's on to me.
Well as being reflective of all of these very American ideas. And one of the things about the city that they built for it, very tied into the westward expansion of that kind of idea. So it's supposed to be much further east from here, but it still have kind of that feel. And I'm out west where I'm in pioneer country, right? Scotts Bluff was where the Oregon Trail went through. So that's part of my cultural background. So to have that reflected in elements within this other story, not Scotts Bluff per se, but with that, it was just really great. There was a lot of resonance with me, and it's just really, really good. But it's limited. It's only it's 83 issues. It's a fixed story. The other thing that was really great about it, when this is one of the things that really foundationed one of our rules for our universe, is that it's a fixed timeline, right? Happened at just less than real time, right? So it's supposed to start 94, 95 when it starts, and then run for 6 years until the year 2000. And that's the end of the story. And it ceased publication probably 2002, 2003. It was just off of happening in real time.
Gotcha.
And so that's one of those things that our universe is a fixed timeline where we have dates that are set up, and like the Forces happens from 2004 to 2006 when the kids graduate. And that's the end of the webcomic. We'll wrap up with them graduating and leaving and that whole thing. And that part of that was inspired by part of it was inspired by DC continually trying to crunch things into smaller amounts of time when Batman should be 45. Damn it.
Umberto Eco, sorry, if I'm going to get really on my high horse, Umberto Eco called it the never when, I think, in his essay on Superman specifically. It was the concept of the never when, which is basically the ambiguous timeline, which I'm again, to me, superheroes are fairy tales. And that ties into myth, because fairy tales are basically kind of mythical story. And so you can deconstruct it, you can have fun with it, you can tell different stories about it. But if you're going to actually do the fairy tale story, which is, if you think about it, eventually people who enjoy fairy tales, they may enjoy some deconstruction, they may enjoy something new, but eventually, if you're there for fairy tales, you're going to want someone to finally freaking tell you a fairy tale, because gosh darn it, it's been like 10 years. Can I finally get a normal fairy tale, please? And I feel like that's also like probably one of the fundamental problems that the superhero genre is facing, is everyone is just like, telling every other different type of story. And it's like, I'm here for the fairy tales, please. And that's where I say, like,
definitely something for that. I think one of the reasons with my defense of that idea for ours is also the concept that one of I think the best stories is the story of the old knight, right? And you don't get the story of the old knight unless there's a young knight to come up and take its place.
You mean the connect?
There you go. And but yeah, the idea that sometimes you go out in a blaze of glory,
right?
So you've got to have, and there's a beauty in growing old and dying, and
got to tilt at that windmill.
What?
I said you got to tilt at that windmill.
And that right there is where I should bring up, is what I'm saying when I say Civil War is the symptom, not the problem. And what I often see as the problem is that concept that Batman is not allowed to grow old and die, right? That we have these stories, and this is also a problem in general in all types of media, film, video games, is when you have this money-making thing, and then the original creator either gives up or leaves or dies, and you want to keep on going. And then next thing you know, you have a story that has been going on for the last 80 years, and it's never going to stop. It gets passed on from writer to writer to writer. People come in, they may have no idea what they're even doing with it when they start. And you now have no room for any actual growth or character development, because Batman has to be Batman. Batman can't have a happy ending. Batman can't learn to be a better person than he is. Batman can't deal with his no-kill rule and whether he should or shouldn't. The Joker could not possibly find himself in a character arc where he starts having to learn to be a good person, because you must always have that character the way we all know and love them.
It's funny that you bring that up. It's funny that you bring that up, because like they just did a thing with Joker being the good guy, and was it White Knight?
Right, but that was an Elseworld story though.
But that's the point I want to make. If I were to kind of like wave my hand and try to make some of this work, I would say that I think Marvel did some of its best work when they embraced the alternate universe storytelling, where they could begin and end things. The Ultimate Comics, where they said, okay, we're taking everything and we're going to kind of just go from the beginning to end with it. And that's where things felt more permanent. Character developments felt like they had more gravity to them because it was a separate universe. Unfortunately, the Ultimate Universe ended up becoming just like the mainstream one, and kind of hitting the recycle button.
Except with more incest.
That happened. But
speaking of Mark Millar,
was that him too?
yeah. The Ultimates and Ultimate X-Men were both Millar.
I mean, to be honest, it was kind of.
Bendis was Spider-Man, and that worked out really good. Thanks, guys.
The intent behind it, the intent behind it was the fact that if you do alternate universes where you can commit to the bit, as opposed to keep, as again, Umberto Eco literally says Superman cannot take a step towards death, if you're able.
here's the thing: is that even then, you're still dealing with a character like Spider-Man, who after 60, 70, 80 years has been established with these rules about who he is and who he must be. And if you don't adhere to those ideas, well, then you're not doing Spider-Man. Right. And that can still, and that's probably why I think you can, look at the Ultimate Universe falling apart like that, is because eventually you find yourself in the same rut where it's like, where do we go from here?
Well, and I think actually a part of that had to do, not with per se, but if you look back to the 85 to 90, probably 94, Spider-Man did have, he demonstrated that next level of his development, settling down, getting married,
true,
all that kind of stuff. And then Mary Jane's pregnant, and they're like, we can't have him move back to Queens. We got to kill the baby. And they did that. They gave Mary Jane
actually do that
her abortion, and they killed. And I believe that's actually when they killed the Marvel Universe. And I think that the last death rattle was Civil War.
Yeah, I think that I think there is a solution though, because like I would be fine with the mainstream continuity continuing like as it always does in its infinite circle, and then you do like some alternate universe titles, not too many, because you don't. Again, I hate Marvel's flood the shelves strategy, but you have the you bring back the Ultimate line where it's like this is going to be a story for people who want to come on board and see a complete story that goes in a specific timeline from beginning to end, and we're gonna get this guy married. He's gonna die like eventually,
right.
And then when we're done with that, we'll do another alternate universe, and we can bring him back and do it again. And so it's like, because I don't know, I just.
And if I may say so, you're gonna hate me, Logan, for saying this, but this is ironically the strength that the movies actually have, at least the Marvel, the current, the MCU. Tony Stark is dead. He's gone. I mean, presumably he's gone, right? But we watch some of these characters go through some pretty major story arcs.
My only problem is he didn't die in Civil War.
What's that?
Tony?
He should have died, you're saying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Tony. From Age of Ultron on, he's the villain of the MCU. He should have been wiped out way earlier. Everything that happened.
Ooh, ho, we got a hot take. It's a hot take, and it's not me. Preach.
Yeah, I'm a curmudgeon.
Do it.
Unless
I love curmudgeoning. Let us curmudgeon.
And I think that's perhaps something that I don't know how people feel. A lot of people love the Marvel movies, hate the DC movies, right? I think that's kind of one of the big differences, though, is that so far the DC movies do seem to take that classic comic book stance of this is what the character has to be. And they just are that way throughout the entire 2.5 hours of the movie. And then throughout every sequel, and nothing ever actually changes about the character. The world just changes around them.
Citations, please. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Let's have a marathon.
I think part of it, I think that we're not seeing enough of the DC properties to determine on that.
True, and they haven't made nearly.
I think that Man of Steel was kind of a mess of a film.
It was
from a purely narrative perspective. I don't even want to get into that right now because
I have yet to see if they can actually.
Sorry. I was gonna say I think the showrunner wants to kick us off now.
No, actually, here's the thing: it's been 2 hours. I try to keep it at 2 hours because I have a life.
Wow.
And but this has been a ton of fun, guys. I got to have you guys back again. Is that gonna be? Would you be up for that?
Yeah.
I don't know
what live stream we've actually managed to make work. So.
Did we not burn our bridges today?
Oh, not at all.
Darn it! What do I have to say?
Well, I guess
you don't like superheroes.
I don't know. No, dude. Here's the thing: is I've got a lot of really violent opinions about things, but I like to let other people have their opinions too, or at least have them. They can be wrong, but they can have them.
How dare you? How dare you?
How dare you? It takes a lot of work.
How dare you?
It takes a lot of work to be this smug. That's all I'm saying.
Full-time job.
you would not believe the amount of effort it takes. But yeah, no, I think this has been really fun. Thanks for coming on, guys. I know we didn't spend that much time talking about Super Schooled, so we got off time.
I mean,
I was
like,
actually more interested in finding out more about your own comic.
no one reads Super Schooled anyway, so
Well, they should, because they should. But I will tell you right now, if you start at the beginning, you can only make it to about 100 before you get lost.
Oh,
Taylor, fix the archive.
oh, okay. I just got what you were saying. All right, I'll take a weekend.
Yeah. But I kid you, it's a fun story. There's a lot of fun, crazy humor. Heroes and villains in school, and that's always something you can check out because I think it's great. And if you guys don't know in the chat, I also have a webcomic, Forces Good and Evil, and this is our URL. It's forcesofgoodandevil.net because we can't afford com. And true. But yeah, we've been at it. We are re-uploading our archives 1 week at a time. Today we just uploaded a one-page comic featuring our character, the Invisible Hippie, and feel free to check that out. Sometime tomorrow we will be having a new.
Wait! I have to stop you there. Well, I have to stop you there. How can a hippie be truly invisible? The stench alone would make him like pinpoint him with like laser accuracy.
You're determined to burn your bridges, aren't you, Logan?
That's olfactory, not optical.
Oh, okay.
Vision. I didn't say undetectable hippie.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's
the invisible hippie. And
the views expressed by Logan do not necessarily express the views.
Here in the Mattriarchy, everybody owns their opinions. And so, guys, you guys in the chat, thanks for coming on. It's been a lively chat. I really enjoyed having you guys here.
Thank you.
Taylor, thanks so much for coming along. Go out, read some webcomics, people. And next week, here on the Mattriarchy, 7-ish to 9-ish, we're going to be having Matt Krotz and number one Marmaduke fan on to talk about all the stuff we're keeping ourselves busy with. And hopefully I'll have Kyrie come in the mail, which I'm very excited about. And because that looks super fun. So maybe I'll give him the old 1-2 and ask all the questions of it. Keep Matt on his toes. But yeah, that's what we got going on. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and
thanks for having us.
If you want to support the Patreon, it helps me, it doesn't help these guys. You want to help us make comics, patreon.com/ideal_comics. That's it. So anyway, thanks for coming along, and you guys have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
Eat your broccoli. Good advice.
No, you can't make me. You're not my dad.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.